Hello, good evening, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, whatever.
Welcome, Venerable Jetsunmou.
Thank you.
Thank you that we have the opportunity to see you, to be with you. And how are you? How are you doing?
We're all fine. The nuns are in the middle of their midterm exams, so they're all revising very hard. But everybody's fine. Getting ready for Losar, Tibetan New Year on 3rd of March.
So it's going to be a big event, right?
Yeah, it's the biggest event of the year, really. I mean, mostly picnics and things. Tibetans love picnics. How is everything where you are? How's the weather?
Well, it's spring. See, it seems spring is coming. It's getting warmer and warmer.
Good. It's a little early, no?
Little early, but we like it actually. I think everybody welcomes this kind of positive, optimistic change of weather towards more warm, more light. It's nice.
Yeah, as long as all the buds don't come out and then it gets very cold again. That's the only problem if it starts too early. Anyway, good. I'm glad it's warming up.
Yes. So perhaps we can wait a minute or so if some other people are eventually joining. Otherwise, then we can start, okay?
Okay, no problem. So how is everything with you, more or less, apart from the weather?
Hopefully okay for me, but also please other people. I would like also other people to say how they are or what they would like to tell you or whatever. So that is also, they are also included.
It's opening up more now?
Excuse me?
Are things opening up?
Yes, regarding the pandemics, yes. Things are more and more opening up and some restrictions and lockdowns are released. And so slowly we are returning to normal.
Good.
And how is in your place in India?
Yeah, they say that the government are going to open up now and with restrictions for tourists. And we also are thinking after Losar and after Losar, the nuns do 1 week of Nyungne. And then after that, we're thinking also to open. We've been closed for 2 years, so it's good, if now we open up and visitors can come again. So we see.
So then, dear friends, dear Dharma friends, let me open this Dharma session of questions and answers with Venerable Jetsunmou Tenzin Palmo. So I don't need to introduce her. We have met for a few times already in the past. So again, I would like to express gratitude on behalf of all of us that we have this good opportunity, good chance to listen to the Dharma, to precious Dharma teaching from Jetsunmou based on your questions. And so I will read, as usually, the questions and then Jetsunmou will answer. And so those who need translation, please join the interpretation channel. Thank you. So the first question is a question about the pure realm of Amitabha. It is said that when we reach Devachan, we will not be enlightened immediately, but at the same time, we will not suffer. We will not even be in a state of arhat. It's a little confusing. Could you please tell us more about that?
Well, of course, first of all, there's no suffering because one has a body of light. And so there's no sickness, no old age, like with the celestial realms, you know, it's very pleasant. So there is no suffering there. And some people say that the body is androgynous, means it's not male or female. So then there's no sexual problems. So in general, it's very nice. But the difference between that and the celestial realms, the heavenly realms, are that here in Amitabha's Pure Land or Akshobhya's Pure Land or any Buddha's Pure Land, one hears the Dharma. One is in the presence of Amitabha and surrounded by bodhisattvas. So it's not just sensual pleasure. It's everything is focused on understanding and practicing the Dharma. So one gradually awakens. This is not a tantric Pure Land. And in the Mahayana Sutras, it takes a long time to finally become enlightened. And so also even in a Pure Land, it takes time, but all the circumstances are supportive. And in the meantime, at a certain point, one can send out emanations into the various realms in order to be able to benefit beings. One doesn't have to wait till one's fully enlightened to do that, because one's basic motivation is bodhicitta, to attain enlightenment for the sake of others. Then in the meantime, what one can do to help others, one will do. I just want to read this small thing from this gentleman who's the head of the Pure Land School in America. It should be remembered that in all China, Tibet, Korea, Vietnam, Japan, the main practice is Pure Land Buddhism, really. Everyone's praying to go to Amitabha's Pure Land. Even in the Zen schools, they also do what's called the Nembutsu, which means the Namo Amitofo prayer. So he says here, through the Nembutsu, that is invoking the name of Amitabha, practitioners open themselves to the illumination of emptiness, the deep flow of the oneness of reality, and the formless Buddha manifest within each of us as the Buddha of boundless compassion. So this mantra, Namo Amida Butsu, embodies both the bodhisattva vow of universal liberation and the Buddha's fully realized awakening. So the Pure Lands are an emanation, a projection of the mind of the Buddhas. So this is why it is the most fulfilling way in Mahayana to be sure not to fall back downwards. You know, because if we get reborn back in the human realm, as we have seen, you know, you might be quite high in your last life, but you can still go down. And it's very hard to really, really benefit beings if you yourself don't really know what you're doing. You know, if you have what we call here, he's calling it the foolish being filled with blind passions. So then we entrust ourselves to the awakening into infinite light. So the point is that there, one cannot go downwards. One can only go upwards. And therefore it's the safest place to get reborn. That's the idea.
Thank you. And then second question. A question about tormas. Is making any offering tormas a part of Tibetan culture, similar to the altar, as you mentioned last time, or is it a part of Buddhism?
Well, I mean, of course, the form that the tormas may take with made of tsampa, of roasted barley flour with butter ornaments, right? I mean, that definitely is Tibetan culture. I mean, they didn't have roasted barley in India, and those butter ornaments would melt in 2 seconds. in the Indian climate. So definitely that is something which was indigenous to the Tibetans. And in fact, you know, in retreat, you know, you can offer biscuits, right? Put a little pile of biscuits, that's enough. It's the offering which counts, not the shape, right? It's the form is not so important. That is just their part of their tradition, but really and truly, it's the offering of some kind of grain, So biscuits are fine. I mean, you can get little round biscuits and just pile them up, you know, but I mean, you know, my Lama one time said, one of the first things she said to me was, always remember that Tibetan Buddhism is half Tibetan culture and half Dharma. Just don't throw out the Dharma while you're throwing out the culture, right? But of course, every country that Buddhism has gone to has adopted the culture of that country. So you have Chinese Buddhism, Japanese Buddhism, Thai Buddhism, and so forth, and Tibetan Buddhism likewise. And so it's very important to recognize, you know, what is really just something which felt comfortable to the people where Buddhism was introduced. They already had their own culture, and then Buddhism came along and adapted itself. The Dharma stays the same. The Dharma doesn't change, but the outer form is very adaptable. And sometimes Tibetans don't know the difference. So they make a lot of fuss about something which really is just Tibetan culture, not Dharma at all. But because that's something which they identify with. So they think it's very, very important. They don't understand it's just the way the Tibetans did it. It's not the way all Buddhists do it. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Thank you. To be, why is the perfect shape of tormas so important? I have the experience that two lamas from the same lineage made the same torma slightly differently.
Exactly. I mean, it's not important, but different traditions have different ways of doing things, right? So depending on who you learned from, you know, you will do in that tradition, but maybe you make it slightly different because you learn from a different teacher to, you know, the fellow monk who wherever he was. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's very important to recognize that it's very nice to carry on their culture for them, but really that is nothing to do with actual, you know, practice of Buddhism. These tormas are just offerings and receptacles for the deity to manifest.
Thank you. Partnership. I have been told, question number 3. I have been told that the Rinpoches have partners to demonstrate that people who have a family can also engage in Dharma. The desire for sex is one of the strongest desires and is therefore one of the strongest defilements. My question is it possible to live an intimate life with a partner without clinging to it? Can there be a sexual arousal in the one who is in the nature of the mind and perceives that everything is an illusion?
Well, of course, Tantra in particular makes a lot of use of the sexual energies. In most forms of Buddhism, of course, you know, we are trying to either overcome completely the sexual urge or else at least to keep it within good ethical boundaries. But in Tantra, of course, they recognize this is an incredible energy which could be used as in Kundalini Yoga to bring the energy, instead of going outwards, to bring it upwards through the various chakras and in that way facilitate realization very quickly. So therefore, high lamas take consorts in order to practice this advanced state of Tantra. And sometimes they are actually they were monks, and then their teachers tell them you should take a consort in order to extend your life. So some people like Deko Kensei, etc., who got quite sick, was told he should marry in order to regain his health again. So in general, there's no problem with feeling, love and affectionate for a partner, and also for any children you have. The only problem is clinging and attachment. Clinging and attachment, non-attachment doesn't mean you're cold and you don't love. All these lamas love their family very much, and their families love them too. It's a very warm family, and their sons and daughters adored their father, and their father was a great example for them and loved them very deeply. It's not that, it's the grasping bit which we have to deal with, in anything. So, in Tantra, even the deities, the Anuttara Yoga Tantra deities are seen in union with their consorts, right? So it's obviously possible to be in a state of realization while you're in a state of union, if even the deities themselves are in that state, right? But of course, it's easy to deceive ourselves and others about this sort of thing, as we all know, So, yeah, unless you are really very well trained in this sort of thing, genuinely well trained, I think it's good not to try to kid yourself that you're a great tantric yogi just because you have sex. But so I think for everybody, it's very important, first of all, to have very ethical sex, which does not cause any harm to anybody, and best of all within marriage, and staying faithful within that, and just not worrying too much about it. The problem is only the grasping mind. So if one can just enjoy sex if you're not a monk, and stay faithful to your partner, give lots of love to them, bring up your children as well as you possibly can, be a good example to everybody, be kind and be good, and then that's enough. Don't worry. The Buddha himself, even in the Theravada, had many advanced students who were married. He didn't tell everybody they have to become monks or that sex is wicked and sinful. It's not like that at all. Sex is perfectly natural. Unless you're a monk and vow to celibacy within the family, then that is a perfectly natural thing. And there's nothing wrong with it at all, provided it's not exploitive in any way, doesn't harm anybody, and is done with genuine love and affection, as an expression of love and affection. Then that's okay, no problem.
Thank you very much. Question number 4. For the long life of teachers or other sentient beings, I recite the White Tara mantra. However, I do not have the empowerment for the practice of White Tara. Does the mantra have the proper effect in this case?
Obviously, in any kind of deity practice, it's better to have the empowerment. There's no beyond that, because it makes a link, all the way back to the original guru who created that particular practice. So, of course, it's very, very best. And then you're introduced like to Tara, and Tara, please meet so-and-so, and everybody shakes hands, and now you're all friends. So it's definitely better to have the empowerment. But in the meantime, if one's intentions are pure, then the blessing is still there. We shouldn't think there's no blessing unless one has empowerment. I mean, really, if from your heart you have pure devotion to Tara, she's there, right? Because Tara represents our true nature. So it's only that the empowerment points out the nature, but whether it's pointed out or not, it's still there. So you shouldn't worry about that. But anyway, just for the sake of it, I will repeat the Tara mantra, the white Tara mantra 3 times, and they can regard that as the lung or the oral transmission, okay? So I would just repeat the mantra 3 times. Om tare tutare ture mama ayo punya jnana pushtin kuru swaha. Om tare tutare ture mama ayo punya jnana pushtin kuru swaha. Om tare tutare ture mama ayo punya jnana pushtin kuru soha. Okay, so that's the lung. It just is, I got it from somebody who got it from somebody who got it from somebody all the way back to Tara. So in that it gives you permission to say it at least. And the important thing is the devotion. If you have devotion, she's there right with you, right standing there in front of you. No worries.
Thank you very much. Then next is a set of few questions related with the same topic. When social, political, ecological, economical, and other events which create uneasiness within us, responding to them in this way shows our low capacity. Can we thus view them as projections of our own ignorance and kleshas?
Well, of course, obviously, ultimately, everything is a projection of our own ignorance and kleshas, right? Nonetheless, there is relative truth and ultimate truth. You know, on an ultimate level, a rock, right, is an empty projection. It's just pure energy and space. But on a relative level, if we throw it at you, you'll bruise, right? And it might even kill us. So, you know, we shouldn't say just, oh, it's all an illusion, as if therefore it doesn't exist. It is an illusion insofar as how we perceive it through our senses is not actually how things really exist. But nonetheless, for us, on the level we are at, that's how they seem to exist. And that's how we have to relate to things, as well as from I mean, just going around saying everything is empty, empty, and you walk into the road and get hit by a car. Well, yes, you know, maybe this life is completely empty because you've just lost it, right? So we have to understand there is ultimate reality, but there is also the relative reality in which we exist. So the two go together. It's all a projection, but while we're projecting, we believe it.
If, then continuation of the question, if outside events appear in the mind too often, is it a state of weak attention, weak mindfulness towards our inner environment, state of being too focused on concepts?
Well, you know, as I said before, you know, while we are in the world, we need to be aware of it, right? So the important thing here is not to get stuck simply in what is happening in outside events. We need to be aware without clinging and without judging everything. You know, I mean, the point is that everything we see, we either like it or we don't like it. We think it's good or we think it's bad in accordance with our own judgments. So in other words, our minds basically should be non-stick, right? Like Teflon. Nothing. Usually when we see something, we adhere to it, we cling to it. So what we need is a mind which it's the thoughts and feelings, they pass by, but they don't leave behind any residue. You know, they just disappear into space. So then observing sights and sounds and tastes and touch and everything, endlessly churning them in the mind, that's the problem. So instead of endlessly following our thoughts, we should try to keep ourselves in the present moment and just observe from moment to moment what is happening in the mind, not judging it or trying to change it, especially during formal sitting, but just knowing what's going on in the mind and how much we are indeed projecting out not only our outer reality, but our responses to that reality. This is the problem, that we get caught up in the past, in the future, going round and round and round with our judgments in the present, but we're not really conscious of what's going on in the mind at that particular moment. That's what we need to do, is to be with what's happening in the moment. So then, you know, whatever happens, we don't have to think, oh, this is good or this is bad. It's just what's happening. Huh?
Mm-hmm. Can these states of mind lead a Buddhist person towards engaged Buddhism or even radical Buddhism?
Yeah, I mean, many high lamas and many high masters are very active. I mean, even while they remain mindful and ungrasping, I mean, you think of Thich Nhat Hanh, for example, or Ghosananda, or the Dalai Lama, or any of these people, they're very active. And even the Buddha himself, I mean, he spent 45 years after his enlightenment wandering around Northeast India, teaching everybody he met and organizing his Sangha and, you know, creating the whole Dharma feast, which we're still, you know, eating today. You know, he wasn't just sitting there spaced out going, oh, you know, I mean, he was a very active guy. My own Lama, Kampa Rinpoche, he also, when he left Tibet, he had all these lay people as well, monastery, and he settled them all. They all built houses. He trained everybody. He was an artist. He trained everybody painting, wood carving, weaving carpets. I mean, everybody was very active, and he was running all over the place, but he was completely centered. I mean, he was the most totally present person you could meet. But he did, you know, he had tremendous social outreach. So many of the great masters have, you know, they have to build their monasteries, train the monks, teach the people, and nowadays wander all around the world, you know, creating Dharma centers. And you know, also many of them have started social projects and encouraged their students to engage in various social projects, going out into villages, helping the people, starting schools, starting hospitals. Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, there's no reason. I mean, if you cannot be aware and conscious unless you're sitting on your cushion, then you don't know what it means to be aware and conscious, isn't it? I mean, we should be able to be consciously aware under all circumstances, right? And with our desire to benefit many beings, then also as much as possible to engage in social outcome, you know, as much as is feasible. No, I mean, you know, lots and lots of great masters are also very great social activists at the same time. Why not?
Can this be the lack of understanding that there is first a need to be stable in meditation practice and how to fundamentally tame the mind, and only then looking for more complex answers?
You know, the two can work together. I mean, it doesn't have to be first this, then that, you know. Of course, the Buddha himself recommended first we have good shamatha, calm meditation to make the mind clear and calm and centered. And then after that, to do vipassana, you know, insight meditation. So the Buddha himself said, let the wise man tame his mind. A well-tamed mind brings happiness, you know. So he definitely did that, but still the two can go together and can support each other. And a calm, quiet, clear mind allows us to see more clearly what is going on inside ourselves. So the two go together. I mean, as our shamatha gets deeper, then also our insight begins to arise, because, you know, once the pool is, you know, the mud has settled, then the pool becomes very clear. And then you can see all the things going on in the pool, you know, all the fish and all the rocks and all the rubbish. It hasn't gotten rid of the mud yet. The mud's still there, but we can see it more clearly now.
And the last question from this set is, can such kind of overthinking in this direction be a sign of lack in meditation practice? Does it indicate the need to sit more?
Well, obviously, if we're endlessly caught up in thinking, then obviously we need to learn how to bring the mind into the present, how to relax, and how to be aware of the mind. The thoughts are not the problem. I think it's very important to recognize the thoughts are not the problem. Our lack of awareness of the thoughts is the problem. That we get carried away by our thoughts, and that we identify with our thoughts, and that we believe our thoughts. I think this, therefore it must be true, right? That's the problem. And that is why it's very important to learn how to step back and just observe the thoughts, the energy as it's going by, without being involved and without being identified with the thoughts. Recognizing thoughts are just thoughts. They are just energy impulses. Some are good, some are not good. But anyway, they're not me, they're not mine. This is our problem, that we get completely swept away by our thinking. And we don't know how to step back and just be aware of our thinking as thinking, rather than being totally engulfed in it. So that's the thing. So this is why in the beginning, it's good to do breath meditation and get the mind calm and centered, and cultivate our ability to observe. So to observe the breath at first is easier than the mind, because the breath is slower. And also as the breath becomes quieter, the mind also becomes quieter. But when the awareness, when the mindfulness is very clear, the attention is very clear, then to turn that back onto the thoughts themselves and to observe the thoughts as they come by, without, as I say, becoming immersed in them and carried away by them. So this is the point. So yeah, you know, thoughts are just thoughts. They're spasms of mental energy. And they're not necessarily true, not necessarily accurate. They're just thoughts. So calm the mind, definitely. I mean, once the mind is calm and clear and focused and aware, then everything else comes about. If the mind is just spiraling out of control and we're not observing it, then any practice we try to do, we cannot accomplish. It won't work. So this is why the Buddha emphasized to have, you know, good shamatha, good, calm, clear, aware mind. Then everything else comes so easily. And in this day and age, when everything outside is so frenetic, it's more and more important to have an inner poise, inner presence. Mm.
Thank you very much. Next set of questions. This question is probably connected to the previous one. How can we find a border between the outer conceptual phenomena or events and internal search for peace? How to properly differentiate outer conceptual reality in case of phenomena which are a real physical violence towards people and beings?
I mean, you know, again, there's the ultimate reality, right? There's the unborn, non-dual nature of consciousness, which we all have. But there's also the relative truth of our conceptual reality. So we need to rest the mind in our awareness and observe whatever appears to us as sights and sounds and you know, taste and touch, whatever impinges on our sense organs. Don't cling to it and don't reject it as sense stimuli. Just know it, right? Just remain inwardly spacious and aware and present, because outwardly everything's like crazy, but inwardly we can be poised and we can recognize all these sense stimuli as they appear. So then we respond spontaneously to whatever presents itself without getting caught in mental prevarication. This is the important thing. If we are inwardly still and present and openly, spaciously aware, then whatever craziness is going on outside, we are not involved with it. And also our mind becomes much more quiet, and then we're not caught up in all this inner turmoil either. I mean, we're just there with whatever happens. And that's the only way to deal with our outer, you know, busyness and our inner busyness, is to become more and more open, spacious, aware, and then spontaneously how we respond will not be part of, should I do this, should I do that, is this better or that better, should I, blah, 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 going on inside. We just naturally know what to say, naturally know what to do. And others might think that that was very skillful, but actually it just was a spontaneous manifestation of what is actually our innate wisdom, which we all have, but which normally gets covered over so we don't see. Then it becomes very simple. The whole point is to simplify. Don't get too complex. You know, all the practices, especially in Mahmud Dzogchen, it's all about simplifying and becoming natural and not clinging. So when you meet great masters, they are so sweet, but they're very simple, right? They're not in the least bit complicated. They're almost like children, but in a good sense, not childish, but childlike, innocent. So keep it simple. You know, people, you're all, no. Just leave it very, 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 very natural. Don't try to change. Just be natural. Just be true.
Thank you. Is it only needed to be patient and consistent in looking for peace in meditation? Can patience and diligence in meditation bring wisdom and inner answers?
Well, obviously we need patience and perseverance. I mean, these are very important. Don't give up, right? Just keep going, but don't push too hard also. Don't get ambitious. I think it's very important not to be goal orientated. What am I getting out of this? How am I doing? Am I doing it right? When will I achieve something? you know, because that is just putting the very worldly kind of mind that we have, our ambition and desire for achievement, onto a spiritual plane. So that's just the ego playing games, right? The ego wants, the sense of me wants to say I'm getting somewhere, right? Oh, look, I'm ever so much better than I was, you know, last week, last month, last year. Look, I'm getting there. Getting where? There's nowhere to go. I mean, forget about enlightenment. Just in the moment, be here now, as they say. I mean, that's it. I mean, really try to not think, am I doing it right? Is this good? What am I getting out of this? When am I going to arrive? Right? It's not like that. I mean, really, it's very important not to make meditation into just another ego enhancement or the spiritual path. It's not like that. It's letting things drop, not adding things on. So, I mean, Atisha also says, you know, the perfect meditation is to be natural. It's not about trying to make ourselves into something else. It's about coming back to who we really are. So don't make it complicated. Don't make it, you know, oh dear, you know, yes, we need patience. Yes, we need to keep going, but we don't expect anything from it. We just, you know, whatever is happening, that's what's happening in that moment. That's enough. We know it. Just to be aware, that's enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, really, don't try to get anything. Don't even try to be calm and peaceful. Don't try to get anything, and don't practice with hope and fear. Right? Just practice, and then whatever comes up, that's what comes up, and that's fine. You know, one day the mind is quiet, and we think, "Oh, that's nice. Now I'm getting it." Next time, it's completely crazy, monkey mind. It's all the same. It's just if we are conscious and aware and present and accepting, that's enough. Doesn't matter.
Will then many different questions disappear by themselves?
Well, that depends on the questions, right? But the mind has its own wisdom. If only we would give it a space and allow the mind, the deeper mind, to speak, you know, so to cultivate an inner silence, then we can hear our own wisdom. I mean, our true nature knows, but we're just so busy going blah, 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 that we don't hear it. But if we just quietly learn how to relax and be aware and conscious of itself, the mind knows, yes. So yes, it can answer those questions, the deeper questions. But we have to give it space, and we have to give silence and listen.
If a monk decides to go on a long-term retreat for several years, does he prepare his mind for life-threatening situations which can happen during the retreat?
That's a strange thing to say. It's certainly not helpful to fill the mind with all the possibilities of what could go wrong in a retreat. I mean, come on, you know, or anywhere else. I mean, anything could happen anywhere, you know. So if the mind can deal skillfully with the present, then it will deal with whatever comes up in the future. You know, as it comes, we will deal with it. I mean, you can't start sitting there thinking of all the terrible things which could happen to you. I mean, then you go crazy. You get stressed out, you get anxious, you get whatever, but it's very, very stupid. You know, if in the moment we are dealing with the moment, then good, we'll deal with the next moment too. Isn't it? Obviously, if you're going into a long retreat, you need to make preparations, make sure you're going to be given enough food, that maybe you have some very basic medicines for, like, if you get a cough or a cold or a headache. But I mean, you can't sit there thinking of all the things which could go wrong. I mean, that, you know, come on.
Or can he be in the present moment, here and now, to the extent that he doesn't have this kind of thought anymore because he has developed meditative skills to a high extent and knows how to control his mind, and thus is beyond concepts about the risks and fear of losing life?
Well, you know, I mean, honestly, if you're always filled with fears about accidents or losing your life, then it would be a very good idea to just sit down and look into the nature of those fears. You know, why is this kind of mind coming up? What's the root of these thoughts? You know, where is it? So this is not just about being in retreat. I mean, this is our basic attitude to life, you know. It's an anxiety that needs to be investigated, right, and transformed. I mean, honestly, if we are always worrying about what could happen to us, you could walk out of the door and be hit by a car. I mean, so then you don't go out the door, because who knows, you know, you might walk down the street and get mugged. Well, then better not walk down the street. I mean, you can't lead life like that. Right? We have to just assume that probably you won't be hit by a car, probably you won't be mugged. And if you are, you'll deal with it when it happens. In the meantime, it hasn't happened, so why are we worrying? Right? I mean, people who are caught up in anxiety, especially about the future, they should look into the nature of that anxiety, not for the future, but right in this moment. Where are these feelings coming from? What is this fear? Listen to the fear. What is it telling you about the state of your consciousness?
Thank you. All Buddhist teachings lead us towards systematic work with our mind, its cultivation, taming, softening. Nowadays, I feel like being polite and soft in interaction with others, saying sorry for a mistake and self-reflection, criticism, etc. is only supporting people in behaving even more roughly and solidifying their ego. Can a balanced and compassionate acceptance of such behavior contribute to their creation of their negative karma?
Well, Shantideva points out that ordinary people are called the childish, right? Because they are not in control of their emotions, like little children, you know. With little children, if you do something which pleases them, they're very happy. If you do something which frustrates them, then they go crazy, they get so angry and upset. Why? Because they are not in control of their emotions. They're little children. But then as we grow up, often outwardly we become adults, but inwardly, emotionally, we're still little children. Somebody does something we like them, we're all happy. Somebody does something which annoys us and we get so angry, same old thing, right? Therefore, even a bodhisattva's forbearance and patience might make them angry, right? You can't say, you know, what's going to make somebody angry. I mean, you know, you can be very polite and nice, and people get angry because you're polite and nice. Well, that's their problem. It's not your problem. So we should feel, Shantideva says, we should feel simply compassion for their ignorance. And from our side, not get upset because we're trying to be nice and they're just being more difficult, right? We shouldn't get upset with them. We should think we're not responsible for the childish behavior of others, right? From our side, our intention is good. How they respond to that is up to them. That's their problem. We cannot live their life for them, right? And as the Buddha said, we are all the owners of our own karma, of our own actions. So if we do something which will hurt someone and they retaliate, that's one thing. But if from our side, our intention is very pure, then how they respond is their problem. It's not our problem. We just have compassion for their inability to, you know, deal with life in a sane manner, in an adult manner. People are very childish. I mean, we all are at times, I mean, undoubtedly. But you can see it, you know, how unskillful we are, which is why, of course, the world is in such a mess. But we're not responsible for that. You know, if from our side, our intention and our actions were kind and good, if people respond unskillfully, we are not responsible for that. We can't do anything about that. So that's the way it is, you know, people are the way people are, you know, we cannot, I mean, even the Buddha, people would criticize the Buddha and say bad things about him. And, you know, the Buddha said, well, if you offer someone a gift, if someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does the gift belong? And they said, well, to the person that gave it. And he said, okay, I don't accept your insults and your slander. So it's yours, right? So if we don't accept other people's bad behavior, who does it belong to? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Death is strongly tabooed in our culture. We are in situations in which family and doctors are trying to keep a very sick, inert person alive for as long as they can. Such people are kept alive in a kind of vegetative condition. If a person in this state rejects, for example, to eat, should his closest ones respect it or try to support him to eat and overcome his dislike?
Well, you know, of course, nowadays death is regarded as being, you know, the big enemy, instead of recognizing it as just a natural outcome of life. You know, everything comes into being and then departs. One man identifies completely with the body. This is the problem. And does not believe in the continuity of consciousness. Doesn't believe in heaven or hell. What to speak of rebirth, right? So death is the end. It's a black nothing. So instead of seeing it as a gateway into a new existence, and probably much better than this one if one is sick and dying, right? Instead of that, the people are taught that that's the end. So therefore you've got to keep that person going for as long as possible so they don't end, because the end is the worst thing it could happen. This is why, you know, psychically, it's very difficult for people nowadays to face death. They don't believe anymore in that you're leaving behind the body, which is just the guest house, but the consciousness goes on. I mean, you know, and if you've been very sick and ill, what a relief to be free from this difficult body, you know. I mean, actually, it's a time of rejoicing, not of feeling sad. So therefore, it's good if the family could accept that it's the right time for the loved one to depart. I mean, they can wish them well, say that they love them, you know, but it's good to go now. Now go towards the light. That's fine. We love you. You can go. It's best you go. So anyway, so it's you know, people who have had near-death experiences, you know, there's so many books and so much out there now on these near-death experiences, people who nearly died and then came back. And almost all of them relate what an incredibly wonderful experience it was, the best thing ever happened to them ever. And how they felt that for the first time, they were really alive. It was more real than our ordinary everyday seeming reality. And when they come back, they are so changed because they recognize what the meaning of life is really all about. And it's not about what they thought it was about, you know, so then they are much more into spiritual things and also into helping others and trying to do something really worthwhile with their lives. So death is not something frightening. We should make friends with death, hug them, you know, hello death, you poor thing, nobody loves you. Well, we will love you. And, you know, make friends with death. It's a great adventure, you know, the best adventure in our lives is when we finally die. So definitely encourage, if somebody is in that state, then try to release them. Nothing worse than being trapped in a body from which there is no release. It's not a kindness. The kindness is to allow them to go, to keep going on their travels, not to get them artificially trapped. Death is very exciting, actually. I don't know why people are so worried about it.
Jetsunmou, you are known for your activism, activities supporting the education of nuns from Himalayan areas and their full acknowledgement, acceptance from the side of monks. How do you manage to fulfill this intention compared to the past, according to the Buddhist teachings? How to be actively engaged in the process of change improvement in society?
Well, let's think. Nowadays, the attitude, you know, absolutely, the attitude towards the female potential is changing worldwide. And even within Buddhism, it is changing. It's slow, but it's changing. As women become more educated, then they also gain much more confidence and they also gain a voice. So, you know, it's really, I mean, mostly, you know, among nuns, you know, the monks are happy that they now have, you know, very well educated Dharma sisters. They at least in the Tibetan tradition, they're very, they nowadays they really respect and appreciate nuns, and the lay people do too. So therefore the nuns are able to go forward and they're going by leaps and bounds. I mean, actually they are quite surpassing our expectations of what they can do. They are just running with it, right? Now, Buddhism has always actually appreciated social endeavors. The Buddhist king Ashoka back in the 3rd century, you know, he wrote on carved everything on stone. And it was all about planting shade trees, digging wells, taking care of animals, living in harmony with your neighbors. I mean, when people finally translated his stone edicts, they couldn't believe that he was what he was talking about, not his great war victories and things like this, but, you know, don't forget to plant more trees. So our actions, so this is backwards in the 3rd century BC, just, you know, 200 years after the Buddha. He was a great Buddhist emperor. Our actions, of course, should be based on kindness and non-harming and observing the precepts and trying to make things better for ourselves and for others. But, you know, nobody can do everything. This is samsara, and samsara is samsara, and there's always going to be troubles. But we can take some part which speaks to us and do our bit, right? Some injustice or some part which, you know, we could help with. And we can do that much, you know. So it shouldn't be based on anger and frustration with society, you know, but it should be based on compassion and a desire to help, you know, that we want to do what we can to benefit others in some way. So we can't do everything because, you know, samsara is samsara, and we have created the karma that we are now experiencing. But still, everybody can do something, even within their family, within their workplace, within their social context. We can do what we can to make others happy. And you know, based on our own recognition that all living beings want happiness and don't want to suffer, just as we would rather be happy and not suffer. And that, therefore, you know, that much we can do for the world to try to bring within our abilities a little happiness into the lives of others. So yes, you know, I mean, but as I say, our social outreach should not be based on anger. It should be based on compassion. I mean, people can always get angry about social injustices, but there's always something to be angry about. And that just creates more aggression on the other side. It doesn't solve the problem. We're much more powerful if our motivation is based on wisdom and compassion.
Thank you. The Buddhist teachings talk of supreme perfection, from which all phenomena arise or manifest. It's only the human mind that categorizes them with a vast array of judgments. A conscious evil doing that harms others belongs here too. How to include this phenomena into the central idea of love and compassion?
All phenomena, so the human mind has a conscious evil doing on the how can we, well, you know, this is all based on basically on a kind of Dzogchen view from the point of view of ultimate reality, where, you know, dog shit and the pizza are equally delicious, right? So if you're at that level, fine, right? The essence of our negative emotions, such as anger and lust, is a very powerful energy wisdom. This is the basis of Tantra, that it's not just a matter of something purely negative. The essential nature is something very powerful, very energetic, but it's got distorted and becomes our negative emotions, our kleshas. But in its essential nature, it is pure wisdom. So this is the thing. In its essential nature, it's pure. All our negative emotions, right? So that's why also the kleshas, the negative emotions like anger and lust and jealousy are also included in the mandala. They are also there because you know, we all have Buddha nature. And all these kleshas are just covering our Buddha nature, but they're not part of the Buddha nature, right? They're the storm clouds in the clear sky. So I have here a quote which says, primordial goodness goes beyond conventional notions of good and bad. It lies much deeper than conditional personality, and which is always a mixture of positive and negative, our ordinary note. Evil and destructive behavior is the result of people failing to recognize the fundamental goodness of their essential nature. So these negative things are just a distorted expression of our true nature. So therefore we should, from the point of relative or conventional truth, where we all are, which is now, right? There is certainly good and evil. I mean, we're not saying good and evil don't exist. On the conventional level, there is good and evil, and there are the karmic results of good and evil, right? You know, right? So they're the karmic results of our actions of body, speech, and mind, depending on the roots of our good and bad. The Buddha said that karma is intention. So if it comes from a destructive root like anger and greed and so forth, then it will have negative results. If it is from a positive thing like kindness and loving kindness and compassion, etc., it will have a wholesome root. So from a conventional point of view in which we are living and experiencing things based on our ego, as long as we believe in me, there will always be karma. Then we should be very careful about our ethical conduct, and we shouldn't kid ourselves into thinking we're beyond all of the societal inhibitions. We should really look very clearly at what is going on in our mind. And if there is negative roots there, then we should transform them. But on an ultimate level, those negative roots are just the expression of our wisdom mind. So if we're really living on an ultimate level, great, but that means you can eat dog shit and be happy. Yummy. I mean, remember that Angulimala, even in the Theravada Sutras, Angulimala killed 99 people or 999 people, depending on your sources, but he became an arhat in one lifetime, right? So as soon as he gained genuine ultimate realization, the karma just fell apart away, even though he had killed so many people. It's the ego which is holding it.
Thank you very much. Question number 12. When I feel tired, should I sit and make the mind deal with it? Or is it better to rest for a while before the sitting session?
Well, I would say just rest. You know, there's no point in pushing the mind and the body if you're too tired. So rest for a short while. And when you feel a bit revived, then continue. I mean, he goes on about it, about being tired, you know, and it sounds to me like maybe he just needs a good rest. Maybe he's not getting enough sleep, right? I mean, it's important to get enough rest for your body and the mind. Otherwise, you're always, you know, below par. And then you have to push yourself, which is not a good thing to do. So I would say first he should examine, or she should examine, whether or not she's getting sufficient sleep. I mean, just something basic like that, you know, you might just be tired because you're not sleeping enough. Okay.
Okay, so that seems to also answer the question 12.2. And perhaps the last part of the question is, I also have a problem with tiredness in a retreat. Usually the first day or two, I get very tired. My body finally relaxes fully, so it wants to sleep.
Yeah, well, I mean, apart from making sure that you sleep first, you know, and that you're really relaxed and rested, then if one continues to feel drowsy, during meditation. I mean, then you have to, that is called sinking mind. I mean, it's not because you haven't had enough sleep. It's just that when you start to meditate, then you just naturally, your mind starts to sink and get drowsy. Then we have to take steps. One thing is to sit with very wide open eyes, staring into space, not keeping the eyes lowered or closed, but open wide, staring into space. That makes the mind wider, spacious, more awake. Also, one can visualize a light here, a bright light, and that also brings up the energy to being here, you know, so that also can help to waken us up a bit. Milarepa, you see it on those tankas which show the life of Milarepa. One of them, he's sitting, and on his head he has a candle, a lighted butter lamp. Because, you know, if you have a lighted butter lamp on your head, you're not going to fall, you know, you're going to be sitting very nicely. So one friend of mine, she had a little bowl of water, which she put on her head. She didn't dare to put a candle in case she got herself a light, but she put a little bowl of water on her head. So the same thing, you have to sit very carefully. Because if you start to doze, then boom. Somebody else, a meditation teacher, meditated on the edge of a well, right? So he was sitting on the wall of a well, a deep well, to meditate. And again, that, you know, causes you to be very conscious. You know, you're not going to fall asleep if you're sitting on the edge of a well. And if you still feel very tired, get up, walk a bit, go outside, look at the sky, look at nature. Just try to revitalize the mind, right? So just these things, just, you know, it's very important that, you know, sometimes people go into very deep states of being very calm and very quiet, but it's really just because the mind has sunk. And maybe from a Dzogchen point of view, it's in the alaya consciousness. So this is not good. The mind should stay very clear and alert. We should feel we're waking up, not that we're going to sleep. And at the end of the meditation, even though the mind is quieter, it should feel very alert, very clear, not very drowsy and kind of, you know, kind of sleepy. So anything that you can think of to make the mind more alert and you know, sometimes in Dzogchen they shout "Bang!" and fall back, right? And that, you know, wakes you up if nothing else does, right? Get the mind alert, awake. Don't fall asleep. And keep the session short, I would say. If you're inclined to be drowsy, keep short sessions, many, but have a break and then start again and really make a determination that you're going to stay alert, right? Otherwise, if they're too long, then the mind kind of drifts off and gets bored and sluggish. So keep these sessions fairly short and precise, you know. The whole point is to wake up, to become more aware, more clear, not more foggy.
How can we talk to children about death and impermanence in a soft way? And what if we are among people that consider it a taboo?
So again, back to death. You know, children can experience death with their pets, you know, with animals, because animals don't live that long, and often animals die. So explain to the children that, you know, we are all on a journey, and eventually we have to leave and start again somewhere else. You know, it's all part of the journey. Explain to them that everything is changing all the time. Look at the river, how the river is endlessly flowing and it's changing moment to moment. And say to the children, look, you're getting bigger moment to moment. Everything's changing. Look at the photos of you, how you looked last year or the year before, how little you were. Now you've gotten so much bigger and you've completely changed. Everything's changing, you know? It's natural to be born. It's natural to live for a while, and then it's natural to depart, which we call dying. But it's all very natural. You shouldn't hide these things from children, really. You know, it's a gateway to another life. So actually, it's a great adventure. You know, we shouldn't think of it as something fearful. We learn to think of something fearful. I mean, I was brought up as a spiritualist. So therefore, every week we had seances in our house and dealt with people who had died before us, etc. So from a very early childhood, I was very used to the idea of spirits all around us and people dying and then carrying on into new kind of lives. So as a result, I grew up without any fear of death, because in our house, we talked about death all the time and what was going to happen next and so forth. It wasn't a fearful subject. We are taught to be fearful. It doesn't mean that we naturally have to be fearful. I'm not fearful because I wasn't brought up being fearful. Death was an everyday, you know, topic of conversation. It wasn't anything frightening. So we should use this time, tell the children to use the time while we're here on earth to be kind to ourselves, kind to others. And because all living beings want happiness, they want happiness. All living beings want happiness, not just humans, but animals and insects. All beings want happiness and don't want to suffer. So, and also we should understand we cannot hold on to people forever. We cannot hold on to possessions forever. We have them for a short time, then we have to let them go, right? So it's nothing to be afraid of. Death is not something to be afraid of. It's a new beginning. And so if, for example, you know, the animals die or something, then you can bury them, can say some prayers and wish that they should have a happy rebirth and so forth, and give them a positive idea of what happens next. Don't frighten them. If you don't frighten them, they won't be frightened. And that's a great gift, not to have a fear of death. And the people around you, you know, if they don't like that, too bad for them. Say, well, that's my view and I'm giving it. It's a whole lot more positive than the view that death is the end or that death is something terrifying, which just pollutes our life. Why have that burden? You know, you can't convince anybody, but I mean, from your side, you can live what you believe. Sometimes if you get people talking about birth, death, and rebirth, it's quite interesting because they start coming out with all sorts of things. People who never talk about this sort of thing. Maybe if you start the conversation, it opens up. I mean, when I was working in the West, I found that people, you know, in the office and elsewhere, they were the ones who wanted to talk about these sort of things. Because normally they would never speak about it, but now suddenly they felt it gave them permission. Especially knowing as a Buddhist you believe in rebirth, then they start telling you about all the places they thought they had been in their last life. I've always been very drawn to Scotland. I think in my last life, I must have been Scottish. Now that's funny you said that, because I felt that when I went to Greece, I felt an immediate sense of of recognition. Do you think I could have been a Greek last life? I mean, and everybody suddenly started giving their ideas of where they're going to be. And I said, well, it doesn't matter where you were last life. How are you using this life for where you're going to go next? Oh, yes, that's the point, right? And it opens it up.
Thank you very much. How can we approach theories about life on other planets through Buddhism? Question number 14.
Yeah, I'm getting that. You know, Buddhism has always taught that the universe is infinite. You know, it's always, even in the Theravada and all Buddhist schools, the idea that the universe is inconceivably vast. And according to the Mahayana, it is not only inconceivably vast, I mean, cosmos after cosmos after cosmos, inconceivable, but it's also inhabited by infinite amount of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, right? In all the world systems, there are infinite Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so, you know, and in some Mahayana sutras, it says how they can help us. They can, you know, if we have faith in them, they are there for us. So there's no problem with theories of life on other planets. You know, there's so many other planets beyond thought, you know. However, we are karmically linked to this Earth system. So this is why we get reborn again and again and again on planet Earth. But other beings get, you know, have their own planetary systems. So yeah, I mean, Buddhism has always believed in infinite life throughout the universe. Probably more intelligent, we hope.
When acting consciously, we are acting on the base of an intention. While being overwhelmed by strong emotions of happiness or anger, since they are gross, I don't know with which intention I'm responding. Is the emotion part of the intention? Or can a strong emotion block time before acting when we are supposed to have awareness of our intention and to act accordingly with awareness? Because it seems to be a complex question with many parts, so perhaps just the first part, or I don't know if it is clear to you.
I mean, you know, so many of these questions are so complicated. I mean, really just make things more simple. You know, most people actually are completely unaware of the intentions when they act, right? This is why we are instructed to become more aware, because we are not aware. You know, we do something, and often we tell ourselves, this is my intention. But actually, it's not the real underlying emotion, which may be based on something quite negative, but we always, you know, try to tell ourselves it was a good intention. And it may have been a good intention, it may not have been a good intention. We don't always see. But don't get caught up on trying to discover the real motivation, because then we just trip ourselves up the whole time. You know, oh, is this the right motivation? Was that really this? Was it really that? You know, strong emotions, you know, influence us and even become the intention. So that's why we have to be conscious the whole time during, you know, just don't get too caught up in always trying to think what was the real motivation behind all this, because, you know, then you just end up, you know, just, you know, so tight. Just relax. And as we become more aware, as we become more conscious, then our true motivation begins to emerge. And also we are not swept away by all these strong emotions. We can see the emotions, we can recognize the emotions. We're not swept away. That's the whole point of being aware. And there's also the point of learning how to be aware during formal sitting, so that we get those awareness muscles strong, so that when we need them, they're there, you know. We are now able to be strong in the midst of all these whirling emotions. And we can see very clearly what's going on in the mind. So it's good to learn how to be aware and clear during times when we are not emotionally involved, so that we get the practice to be able to deal with it when we have more strong emotions coming up. Do you understand? I mean, you know, we start from something simple, like sitting in meditation and practicing being aware. And gradually that gives us the ability, the strength to be able to maintain awareness under all circumstances. I'm not worried, you know, I mean, just if we have very strong negative emotions, to recognize that and then, you know, deal with it in whatever way we've been taught how to deal with negative emotions. I mean, otherwise you just get yourself all in, you know, just relax and just look at the mind. I mean, even the, you know, Milarepa, the Buddha, Guru Rinpoche, Atisha, everybody said the essence of the practice is to observe the mind. So that's what we need to do, is learn how to recognize whatever is coming up as it's coming up, and then we can deal with it intelligently instead of being swept along. Maybe we take one more question and then leave it for now. We can do the others next time.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yes, of course, thank you. If I were to die right now, let's say with a heart attack or sudden accident, which would be the best practice to rely upon?
Well, if you were to die so suddenly, it would be the practice which is most familiar to you, which will come to you at the end. You know, I mean, you wouldn't have time to decide, now, which practice should I do? You know, you've just had a heart attack or you've just been slammed in an accident. I mean, there's no time to decide which one would be best. When Mahatma Gandhi, when he was shot and killed, I mean, as he was shot, he cried, "Ram, Ram," which is, you know, is the name of the god Rama. So that was his last. That was his last thing, right? So when a truck full of our young nuns overturned in the road, and all the little nuns were thrown out onto the road. One of them said afterwards that as the truck turned over, she thought, you know, this is it, basically. And her thought was of Guru Rinpoche. She just said Guru Rinpoche, that she was, and she, I mean, she lost consciousness and then she was okay, she didn't die. But that was her last thought because she is very devoted to Guru Rinpoche. So, you know, the thing is that the Chinese, for example, Chinese Buddhists all say Omitofo. When you meet them, Omitofo. When you say goodbye, Omitofo. When you give them something, Omitofo. If they see something nice, Omitofo. You know, Omitofo means Amitabha Buddha. And so they say it continually, so that should something happen suddenly, their last thought will be Omitofo. And then Amitabha will come, right? So this is the point. that you know, that you should you know, you should keep, I mean, like the Tibetans say, Om Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum, Mani Padme Hum. They're thinking the Chenrezig. And, or, you know, Guru Rinpoche or whatever, or Tara. But, you know, you can't decide at the end, just at the end, what you're going to think about. I mean, if you suddenly, whatever spontaneously comes will come. So you have to train now, right? And whatever will then automatically, spontaneously come to the mind at the time of death. And I mean, for ordinary people, if you can just say to them, well, just think of the light, go towards the light. That's enough.
So, dear Jetsunmou, thank you so very much for your kind answers and for our time that we have had together. And so we are very grateful. We hope there will be a chance or occasion to continue our session, perhaps in the future. So again, perhaps on behalf of all of us, thank you so very much. And we wish you all the best and good luck. And may everything goes well for you and for your nunnery in India. And thank you once again.
Well, thank you, Lucas, and thank all of you. And really, I wish all of you the very, very, very best for this coming year of the water tiger. May it be very auspicious for you and for the whole world at this time. And it seems that in March, everything is going to be more open up. So that is indeed the new year coming. And so may all be well for everybody. So I hope to see you again at some point. We will see in the future. You can save these questions which we haven't dealt with. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we can start with those next time.
Okay, thank you. We will do like that. And also, I would like to say for our translator, Katka, thank you so much for your hard work for translation.
Translators are wonderful. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. Really, without you, nothing, literally. And so, you know, translators are always in the background. Nobody notices them, without them, it couldn't happen. So really, thank you so much for all your skill and all your patience and all your expertise. Thank you so much. And the one that's typing busily here. Thank you.
So thank you once again. Thank you.
May all be well and happy.
Thank you very much. Tak priatelia, ešte raz veľká vďaka vám všetkým a taktiež tým, ktorí sa zapríčinili o organizáciu tohto stretnutia. Predovšetkým vďaka Janke Bojnákovej a Tarab Inštitútu Slovenskému za tento Zoom link, Zoom s prekladateľským kanálom, za čo sme veľmi vďační, a taktiež Evke Fidlerovej za rozposielanie e-mailov, komunikáciu s vami. Takže o ďalšom stretnutí s Jetsunmou Tenzin Palmo, otázok a odpovedí, vás budeme informovať, keď sa dohodneme na ďalšom termíne. Ak medzičasom by ste mali nejaké ďalšie otázky, tak kľudne prosím napíšte Eve Fidlerovej a my tieto otázky zahrnieme do toho zoznamu, ktorý sme nedokončili dnes. Ďakujem pekne, príjemný víkend, nech sa vám darí. Ahoj.
Ahoj. Ďakujem.
Ďakujem veľmi. Zdravíme z Prahy.